You got to look at the ballot tabulator and how the votes are tallied. And that was my focus when I went to the Detroit AV Counting Board. I was one of those folks that was not specifically assigned to any particular counting station. I was looking at the big picture. And we'll go over what I found here in a sec. First of all, everybody hopefully has seen the idea that there's been a lot of voter anomalies. This is our first clue that something's happened. When you're on the ground, you can see all the things that are happening, you know, onesie, twosie style. You say, hey, wait a minute, that envelope was backdated, or you can see that they adjudicated something in favor of the Democrat instead of the Republican or something like that. That's easy to go off and see, but it's very difficult to see the big picture. That comes out afterwards with experts like Colonel Waldron. And in this case, we first started seeing issues when people were talking about Benford's law being violated. That's actually used in criminal court cases to determine whether or not fraud existed. So that was the first indicator that some of the analyses we've seen flagged that. That's not proof. I mean, it's getting it's telling you that it's you've got something off here that you got to investigate. Then we've seen linear regression analyses that there's a lot of noise in, but it seemed to indicate a pattern of vote distribution that indicates some data manipulation. Then, most recently, we have actually seen folks who believe that they've identified specifically what the algorithm that was used to switch some of the data. So, some other things that were kind of odd, and you don't see while you're necessarily on the ground, but in retrospect, you'll be able to get access to it. This is actually documented as part of the affidavit that was submitted in a lawsuit that's put in Michigan by Sidney Powell and in other states. And you guys have voted quite a bit. You guys are, most of you have already served in office, right? Do you remember any of your votes being tabulated with a decimal point on the back of them? I don't remember any. My 8 years serving in the Michigan Senate, any times where I actually had a decimal point after a vote tally.
So that would suggest that a partial person was voting?
Well, sometimes, you know, there were people that tried to make you feel like a partial person when you serve, but no, that wasn't the case here. And so you guys have probably all heard about what I call the little switch, the Antrim County. We've heard testimony on that already today and some of the things that could possibly happen. Getting into the possible technical reasons for that is maybe you have an internal ballot barcode switch on it where they have one barcode style or ballot style that's flagged, and then when they associate a specific scan of a vote, they flip it over to a different barcode style that may have the voters or the candidates flipped in it. Something else is something called a ranked choice voting algorithm. It's one of the modules inside of the Dominion suite. And this is where you might see evidence of, this is the only place that I know of at least that can start putting in fractions into your vote. Because if you meet a certain vote threshold, it'll go off and switch that, it'll prioritize the votes for the second choice, if you will, and give them 10% of the first choice of whoever or 10% or whatever number you specify. It'll actually get into the point of allocating percentages of votes to one of the candidates. Another thing is data manipulation via remote access. And another thing to look at as you guys investigate what happened here or didn't happen inside Arizona is take a look at your public accuracy tests. And there are people that, this is usually in Michigan at least, it's specified what the standards are for that by the Secretary of State. And if you don't run all the possible permutations of votes that might happen on a given ballot, you may leave gaps that can be exploited. And I would submit, we're going to show one of the examples of where we believe one of those gaps is that you could maybe flip a vote from a certain candidate to a write-in candidate and preload this with write-in candidates, and we think we have evidence of that happening in Detroit. So if you want to go off and check into this, one of the things you're going to need to do, is look into compact flashcards, event logs, and paper vote tallies. So these tabulator data cards, that's where the compact, that's where a lot of the election data we've been wanting to look at is going to be located, so please make sure you get your hands on that. Then we talk about the big switch. I'm not going to get into any detail on this. Suffice it to say, in Michigan, you know, our current vote deficit for President Trump is being projected as 154,188 votes. We got more than that we can tie back to potential fraud. So in the state of Michigan, I know a lot of people have written us off in this context, but I tell you, Michigan's in play because of what the level of fraud we've seen. So here's what our Detroit AV Counting Board looked like. And essentially it was set up so there's 503 precincts in the city of Detroit. They put in 134 of these ImageCast central stations all the way around. And that's where the poll books were located. There are about 2 to 5 precincts per ImageCast central unit. We had 5 poll workers per station. Overall, I would submit there was probably less than 10 Republican workers at that whole night sitting at those, and by law, we're supposed to have a Republican and a Democrat adjudicating ballots. Here's what I said, that I was looking at the big picture when I got in there. I was looking at the big picture. First question I asked was, one of these chief election officials, his name was Chris Thomas, I said, who I worked with when I was serving in the Senate, I said, how are you going to protect the chain of custody around the tallies of the individual tabulators and your report outs to the county and all points beyond that? So we talked about the idea that this is getting reported out to the New York Times. You can see it on CNN and all that kind of stuff. Show me how that chain of custody is protected. And this election official, who was state elections director in Michigan for 2 decades, said, I don't know. Now, this is kind of an important data point, don't you think? And I was badgering him the rest of the night. I said, you know what? He finally acquiesced and said, tell you what, I'll let you know. And then finally, the last statement he had on it, because I was pretty persistent, was saying, you know what, I'm not going to tell you till after tomorrow. And I go, well, you know what the primary duty of a poll challenger is? To make sure that the election process are executed effectively and efficiently and accurately and transparent manner. He did not allow that to be done. A lot of these election officials will swear up and down that none of these machines were connected to the internet. And that's based on propaganda being pushed by companies like Dominion Voting Systems. They will say that they have an air gap. They will say that they have firewalls in place. They have encryption in place. And I hope to demonstrate here that that doesn't mean a heck of a lot. Any hacker worth their salt knows that if one computer is connected to the internet, they're all connected to the internet, firewall or not. And so here's a diagram that I put together based on, this is literally midnight the next night, before I forgot everything. I wanted to make sure I document everything that was there. I went through and physically traced all the cables from all the tabulators and adjudicators to the local data center at the top. So it's that local data center that we have election officials that did confirm that that was connected to the internet, but they said none of the tabulators or anything else were connected to the internet. I can show physical connection between those tabulator machines via Ethernet cables, 2 routers or managed switch. It's tough to tell from 12 feet away. But it's a router type of device connected to all the other devices on this network. And as Colonel Waldron pointed out, it's designed to work as a network. And so all these tabulators were connected to one another, all the adjudicators were connected to one another, the local data center that they acknowledged was connected to the internet were connected to these tabulators and adjudicators. So, so if that wasn't enough, we went around to all the different computers and observed in the bottom right-hand corner of all the computers, I can't do this because it defaults into a certain slide presentation mode, but if you have laptops that are window enabled and you're connected to the internet, you roll over that and you got a Windows 10 device, roll your mouse cursor over in that bottom right-hand corner and you'll see a LAN internet connection icon. And you roll over it, it's going to pop up and say connected to the internet. They wouldn't do that test for me to go off and demonstrate that. Yeah. So guys, it's serious stuff, and I also wanted to highlight, I took a snapshot of what the Wi-Fi connections were at that point in time. And one of them is called AV_connect. I wonder what that was connecting. Part of their spec that they have in the contract with the state of Michigan that are supposed to be connected via Ethernet cables. And they even have cellular-based modems that they can plug into a lot of these items to transfer the data over the internet. They've got a Dominion tech support manual that